But first, we begin with a series of explosive memos prepared by former FBI Director James Comey, released to Congress last night, offering new details on and raising questions into his interactions with President Trump as the FBI's Russian probe intensified. Now, sources familiar with the probe confirm that the Justice Department Inspector General is investigating Comey for his handling of these memos after just referring former FBI Director Andrew McCabe for criminal prosecution. Joining me now to help break it all down, Harmeet, Dhillon, trial lawyer and Republican strategist, Amber Athey, a reporter for the Daily Caller, and Britt McHenry, Fox 5 D.C., like it or not, host and contributor to the Federalist. Harmeet, I've got to start with you here on this. What a tangled web it looks like James Comey might have woven for himself here.
Absolutely. What we're seeing is James Comey putting himself right in the middle of the web that other FBI agents have already been implicated in. Page, Strzok, Andy McCabe, and now Comey. And this is very high stakes. Comey and McCabe are pointing fingers at each other. But what is the ultimate takeaway here is that these memos reveal that what the president's interactions with Comey show that the president did nothing wrong. The president reacted in a normal way. He's like, hey, go ahead and investigate this stuff, and then let's clear it up and let's move on for the American people. Comey, on the other hand, comes out looking like somebody who set up meetings, used meetings with the president as quote-unquote news hooks, which he told the president is what was needed to report on things. And he's as big a leaker as the other people implicated in these scandals. It's really shocking stuff.
There's no doubt about that, Britt. Not only is he, he comes across as a confirmed leaker, but now there are questions as to the classification of some of these documents that he leaked, and did he deliberately do it in such a way that perhaps he thought he was passing the smell test, and maybe it was too cute by half. Maybe this will still catch up with him.
Well, that's where a lot of eyeballs are now, and the attention is being placed on CNN. And some comments from Comey that it would be damaging for information he was purposely leaking to get out. He's leakier than a faucet here, Charles. And what I find interesting, the president just tweeted hours ago, was his approval rating still is higher than former President Barack Obama's around this time 8 years ago. It's around 50%, according to Rasmussen. So it's just funny how all of these attacks, everything James Comey is trying to do, there's no higher loyalty he has. He said President Trump wanted loyalty. The only loyalty Comey has is to himself and selling books.
Amber, you wrote that the James Comey, that these memos revealed that he didn't feel pressured or have any obstruction concerns at the time. So what was his motivation? Because it feels like, he was trying to find some way to get this whole prostitution story, or Russian prostitution story, into the media.
Right. Well, look, as Harmeet and Britt mentioned, CNN was apparently looking for a news hook on this story. As we know, James Clapper was one of the people who pressured Comey into briefing Trump about the alleged dossier that alleged that Trump was meeting with prostitutes in Russia. And then you turn around and CNN ended up reporting on the fact that the FBI director was briefing Trump. It's really hard to imagine how anything in these memos makes Trump look bad. Really, it makes Comey look bad, because as he's going on this press tour, we find a number of contradictions and things that he's told the press, and then what comes out in the memos. For example, in his interview with CNN's Jake Tapper yesterday, Comey said that he couldn't answer when asked if he thought Hillary would be a better president than Trump. And then he went on a podcast a little while later and admitted that he thought Hillary would probably be better for the country. And then in his memos, he apparently told Trump that he wasn't a leaker and didn't do, quote, weasel moves. And now we know that's exactly what he did, giving three or four of those classified memos to his Columbia law professor buddy. So really, Comey comes out of this looking even more self-serving and even more of, as Trump would say, slippery than he did before.
Right. But Harmeet, there's one thing to sort of be a hypocrite. I think a lot of folks, by the way, apolitical and on both sides of the aisle, are starting to see that with respect to James Comey. But it feels like he's also put himself in an awkward position with respect to perhaps, having some legal issues, some legal problems here.
It's not just awkward, Charles. It is illegal. It is a crime to mishandle classified information, and multiple people have been indicted and prosecuted over the years, including government officials, for that crime. And it's not just one memo. It's possibly two, possibly more. Who knows what else is in there. But what is very important for your viewers to note is that the same behavior that FBI agents routinely catch people in and prosecute them for is what McCabe, Comey, Strzok, and Page are being looked at now for. And, you know, fair is fair. If we're going to hold American citizens to that standard, the FBI agents and the FBI officials must be held to an even higher standard, and clearly they failed that test.
Well, are you confident now, though, Harmeet, that perhaps with the Inspector General getting involved, taking a look at this, that maybe they'll circle back and some of the things and checks and balances that should have been in place before, maybe they'll make up for it now?
Maybe. You know, I'm a little cynical, Charles. I've seen a lot of people get away with some high crimes and misdemeanors here in terms of what they've done against the country. And Clapper is an example of somebody who's lied to Congress and gotten away with it. The statute of limitations of 5 years ran out on that. And so we'll see what happens. I mean, ultimately, I don't really like to see political disputes being brought into the courts and criminalized. However, this is an extreme example, and it's not just Comey. You know, we know from other news stories that McCabe set up a meeting with Reince Priebus to say, hey, you know, that Russia stuff, it's all nonsense. Don't worry about it. And that turned into a leak to CNN to say that the White House was pressuring the FBI. It's completely false and fabricated and acting in concert. It isn't one rogue. It is multiple people. That's a conspiracy, potentially. And so, yes, a lot more questions need to be asked about this.
Britt, of course, one of the things we're coming away with here is that Comey, lack of self-awareness, he's put himself on this moral pedestal for some reason, and yet every day it's being chipped at, and to the point where, again, you know, perhaps the irony of all of this will be that maybe he'll face some criminal prosecution here.
Yeah, and you look at James Comey and you really question if he has any sort of integrity given how many administrations he attacked, whatever side of the aisle you're on. If you Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, the different ways he was trying to go about her investigation. And now with President Trump, it's what I fear is the American people are going to be desensitized to this, Charles, that they're going to start to really question law enforcement. And it seems as though the narrative is that James Comey and the FBI wants to just go at and diminish our president at all costs. And that isn't the message that should be delivered to the public. It shouldn't be going on.
Well, what message should be delivered? In other words, we do see where people who had the top law enforcement officials in our nation were somehow compromised either in the job they did for us on behalf of the American public, or because of their own ideology was so deep and so embedded that it influenced their approach to work.
It needs to be vetted. We talk about just politicians and cleaning out the swamp. And I think now we have a magnifying glass on our law enforcement. As much as I'm usually one defending them, how can you look at the FBI right now, Charles, and see all these partisan motivations and not want that to just be gutted out and really handled properly in the best way?
Sure. I think we all, though, separate the rank and file from the folks at the top. Real quick, Britt, you cover the media. How do you, will they, in your assumption or your thinking here, provide the typical cover for someone like a James Comey because of their dislike for President Trump, or are they equally disgusted? And maybe we'll get some form of true, honest coverage here.
I'm laughing. That's my real response to that.
I'm sorry, Amber. I meant to ask Amber that.
I will give some credit to Jake Tapper. I thought he gave Comey a pretty tough interview yesterday. However, later on in the evening, he went on with Rachel Maddow on MSNBC, and he again got some more softballs. So I think the problem here is that because Comey is anti-Trump, because he's released this book and gone on this press tour with the effort of undermining the presidency and making the president look out to be a criminal who was obstructing justice while he was the director of the FBI. Unfortunately, the media loves to bash on Trump. So it's just another person that they can use to prop up to push that agenda. So I find it unlikely that he's going to be leaving the spotlight anytime soon. He certainly doesn't appear to want to do that. I would look forward to more of the press using these memos as a way to undermine the Trump presidency, especially considering the tone that they're giving it, making it look like because the president was fixated on the Russia probe that somehow means that he's guilty.
All right, ladies, thank you all very, very much.